She'll never remember her password anyway. My daughter said, assuming I was asleep. The house was quiet. I lay in bed, lights out, door slightly ajar. From the hallway, I heard Amanda's hushed, dismissive voice as she spoke to her husband. She didn't know I caught every word. Earlier that afternoon, I'd asked her to help me with my online banking. Not because I was helpless, but because the system had updated its security again. I was tired, and two-step codes exhaust me. She sighed, grabbed my phone, changed the password, tapped a few times, then handed it back with a sharp "There, it's fixed." I stayed silent. At 78, silence feels like armor. You learn to let eye rolls pass. You don't ask again. You thank politely. That's the price of being tolerated. But I wasn't always quiet. I once ran a small antique shop in town. It wasn't much, but it was mine. I balanced every book, tracked every penny. After my husband passed, I kept everything running. Our home, the bills, even Amanda's loans and her first mortgage. She used to cry in my kitchen thanking me for knowing what to do. I did know. I still do. But somewhere along the years, Amanda mistook my knowledge for control. Slowly, she began taking over, to help, renewing my insurance, calling service companies, managing my subscriptions, handling my logins. At first, it sounded caring. But care without respect becomes control, and love shouldn't speak of you as if you're already fading. That night, I heard her say clearly, "She doesn't even check her statements. I've streamlined everything. It's easier this way." Her husband mumbled something I missed, and Amanda laughed. Trust me, if I asked her to log in right now, she wouldn't even know where to start. Something inside me stirred. Something I thought had gone dormant. I lay there staring at the ceiling, wide awake. I remembered the bank's website, my account number, and what Amanda had likely changed. More importantly, I knew what she hadn't. The next morning I brewed her tea, smiled, listened to her chatter about the neighbors and gas prices. I asked for nothing. By noon, she was gone. Only then did I open my laptop. The login page was familiar. I tried the password Amanda always favored for everything, and I was in. The screen glowed with numbers, balances, transfers, authorizations. My stomach dropped. A transfer of 38,000 was scheduled to leave my account within days, heading to an account that matched Amanda's middle name. This wasn't just management. It was theft. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I wrote. I opened a notebook and started recording dates, amounts, suspicious entries. I printed statements, highlighted patterns, and made copies. Then I called my lawyer. That afternoon, Amanda left a sugary voicemail. "Hi, Mom. Just checking in. Love you." I didn't call back. Instead, I studied the records. Small witted a year earlier, 180 here, 250 there, innocent enough. But the numbers grew, 503, 200, even a 12,000 wire to a name I didn't know. Amanda wasn't just dipping into my account. She was running a quiet scheme. She'd always been clever. Unlike me, she had little patience for details, but she knew how to manipulate with words. "Don't worry, Mom. I've got it handled." I used to believe her. During the pandemic, sick and too weak to sit up, I'd given her my login so she could pay bills. That was 3 years ago. Since then, she'd taken control of nearly everything: utilities, insurance, even my voter registration. At first, I told myself I was fortunate. So many women at the center were abandoned by children who lived far away. Amanda lived close by. She brought groceries. She texted back. But kindness that comes with strings isn't kindness at all. It's leverage. I remembered something my late husband once said: "Love without respect is just obligation in disguise." His words rang louder than ever. By evening, I had a folder full of proof, statements, screenshots, emails where Amanda had impersonated me to reroute bank communication to her own address. Fraud. Clean, calculated fraud. The next morning, I called the bank. Mrs. Collier, the representative said gently, "We have your daughter Amanda listed as the primary contact on this account." I smiled, though they couldn't see. "Well," I replied steadily, "that's about to change." 3 hours later, after notarizations and verifications, Amanda's access was suspended. Not permanently, just enough to make her uneasy. Then I made another call. Judith Wallace, an attorney I hadn't spoken to in decades, but whose reputation was unshakable. When she answered, her voice was sharp as ever. "Do you have documentation?" she asked. "Oh yes," I said, glancing at the thick folder in front of me. "Plenty. Dozens. I answered. Then come by tomorrow, Judith replied evenly. We'll draft the first filings. Filings. My chest tightened. If your daughter has been signing paperwork under your name. She explained. We need to act quickly, before she tries to declare you incompetent. She wouldn't, I whispered. But even as the words left my mouth, I knew better. Mildred, Judith said softly, you're not the first mother I've defended. And sadly, you won't be the last. After the call, I sat in my quiet kitchen, tea untouched, the afternoon sunlight spilling across the table. Nothing around me looked different, but everything had shifted. My daughter, the child I once soothed through fevers, the girl who wept over playground scrapes, the woman I supported through heartbreak, was now attempting to build her future on the ruins of mine. And I was finished pretending not to see it. Later that evening, I tried my password once, twice, slowly, carefully. Each time, the screen flashed red, incorrect credentials. I checked my notebook. The code was written there in my handwriting. I knew it by heart. I typed again. Denied. I closed the laptop, exhaling a breath that felt years overdue. Then I called Amanda. Hey, Mom, she answered, her voice falsely bright. Everything okay? The password's changed, I said. A pause, yeah. I had to reset it. The bank was being weird. I didn't want you locked out again. I wasn't locked out, I replied evenly. I logged in 2 days ago. They updated security. I had to handle it, she said quickly. You didn't tell me. I meant to. I've just been buried. You know how it is. Her tone hardened. You don't need to stress about this, Mom. I've got it handled. You always forget your codes. I've forgotten once, I corrected her silence. Then, I'll write it down for you next time. It's not a big deal, but it was. It was everything. Being locked out of my own account wasn't about convenience. It was about erasure, about being quietly placed in a new category, the forgetful, the dependent, the managed. But I was not helpless, and I had not forgotten. The next morning, Judith called back. We've reviewed the documents. Your daughter filed paperwork claiming she has power of attorney. My blood ran cold. She what? She filed it months ago. Claims you gave her permission for emergencies. That made her your financial proxy. The bank may not even notify you of her moves. I never agreed to that. I believe you, Judith said firmly, but the institution believes signatures. And she's also requested a guardianship hearing. Guardianship, a word colder than theft. That wasn't help, it was possession. I sat for a long while after the call, remembering every small moment I'd brushed aside. Her correcting me in front of friends, her casual, Mom forgets things. Seeds of a narrative, a story she was building. But I wasn't confused, I was clear. That night I opened the old filing cabinet. Decades of records waited, tax returns, deeds, insurance forms, every scrap Amanda once teased me for keeping. I pulled out the heavy envelope containing our original family trust. My late husband David had insisted on one phrase, nothing passes without Mildred's say, unless a medical authority and a court agree she cannot continue. Not Amanda's opinion. Not a signature slipped under a casual conversation. A court order. I spread the papers across the table, each page a weapon. My notebook became a ledger, assets, transfers, timelines. I underlined one sentence twice. The trust shall be managed solely by Mildred Collier unless legally declared incapacitated. When Judith called again, she sounded brisk. The hearing is in 2 weeks. She's pushing it fast. Because she thinks I'll stall, I said. I won't. Then be ready. She'll call you forgetful, unstable. She may even bring a doctor. Let her try, I answered. Test me, I walk every morning. I cook every meal. I remember every family birthday, including her ex-husband's. Judith chuckled. Good. I'll schedule an independent evaluation. That way, there's no doubt. The next day, I sat in a neurologist's office, breezing through memory tests and puzzles. You've got sharper recall than most people your age, he said, stamping the report. I'll testify to that. I carried the papers home like armor. 2 days later, Amanda appeared unannounced. Polished, perfect, perfume crisp as her lies. Hey, Mom. I was in the neighborhood. You've already been in my accounts, I said evenly. What else do you need? Her face froze. I don't know what you're talking about. Then, softer, I only ever tried to protect you. But cutting me out of my own life? I asked. You've been forgetting things. She snapped. Like the stove. I didn't forget. You insisted on groceries I didn't want. I used them. Her mouth opened, then closed. The confidence wavered. I have a hearing next week, I told her calmly. Her eyes narrowed. You what? Filed a counter motion. And you're removed from the trust. Effective immediately. You can't do that. I already have. She stood there, fists clenched, fighting between anger and tears. At last she spat. I've done everything for you. Not everything, I said to the door as it shut behind her. You've always looked out for yourself. His name was Lawrence Wynn, and I hadn't laid eyes on him in nearly 2 decades. He used to work with David when they ran their modest appraisal business. A quiet man, sharp-eyed, with a memory that stored details like a vault, and a deep distrust of anything digital. A man should never let machines hold his money, he often said. I found his number in an old address book tucked behind a worn birthday card David once wrote me. The number hadn't changed, and neither had Lawrence. Mildred, he greeted, his voice clear despite the static. I wondered when you'd finally call. You were expecting me. I've heard rumors. Amanda's been contacting my accountant. I sat upright. Your accountant? She asked him if he'd help with her mother's estate planning, claimed it was time to simplify assets before her mother's memory worsened. My chest tightened. Silence filled the room, even my breath stalled. She's becoming reckless, I whispered. No, Lawrence corrected. She's becoming careless. Too many shortcuts. Not enough finesse. I told him everything, the passwords, the filings, the trust, the hearing that loomed. He whistled low. You've got a battle on your hands. I know, I admitted, but I'm worn down, Lawrence. I'm finished. He didn't argue. I'll come by tomorrow. Bring the documents. The next morning he arrived sharp at 9, briefcase in hand, 2 black coffees. No sugar, no cream, he said. You still drink it that way? I smiled. Always. At the dining table, sunlight softening the edges, he laid out the trust documents, property records, tax returns, and notes written in his precise, angled handwriting. She's used your name in several financial requests, he pointed out. That's fraud, I said. And if she moved money under your trust without approval? It's theft, he confirmed. Together we built a timeline, every transfer, every false label. It all began when I was sick with pneumonia and staying at Amanda's house. That's when the first small shift started. It's called wash movement, Lawrence explained. Looks harmless, but it's a setup for control. By afternoon, the pattern was undeniable. She's been at this for at least a year, I said. Longer, he replied. She waited for weakness, illness, confusion. Anything to make you seem unfit. But I'm not weak, no. His eyes held steady. No, you're dangerous. He left before sunset, promising to draft an affidavit. At the door, he added quietly, David would have been proud. You didn't let her win. I should have felt triumphant. Instead, I felt drained. Betrayal from your own child doesn't fit neatly anywhere. It just lingers in the chest. You think back to lullabies, homework nights, whispered secrets at the kitchen table. And you ask yourself, when did love twist into ambition? Amanda always admired control, mistaking it for safety. She never understood the difference between leading and dominating. That night, wrapped in a blanket on the porch, I watched the last light fade. A neighbor waved with her dog. I waved back. My phone buzzed. Amanda. I didn't answer. Silence would be her lesson. Then the letter came. Petition for guardianship of Mildred Collier, filed by Amanda. Grounds: cognitive decline, financial mismanagement. The words were polished. Protection, well-being, stability. But the intent was ownership. She wanted control over me, my house, my life. Judith called almost immediately. She filed quickly. She's using your age, your resistance to her involvement, and her supposed concern as evidence. Resisting help, I scoffed. Changing my own password is resisting. They'll argue paranoia. It's a common tactic, Judith warned, but once you prove competence, the case crumbles. The next day, Dr. Lin, a specialist, tested me thoroughly. Memory, focus, judgment. I passed every exam. No decline, she said. You're perfectly capable. That evening Amanda texted, "Hi Mom, I care about you. Things are just complicated. We both want what's best." No apology. No withdrawal of her petition. Just her polished, slippery tone. I left it unanswered. Days later, a court notice arrived. Hearing date 1 week. Witnesses Amanda's husband and a physician I hadn't seen in 3 years. Her husband. The man barely stepped into my home all year. Yet he'd testify against me. I felt anger rise, then harden into resolve. Let them talk. I had my truth, my evidence, and my voice. There's a strange calm after betrayal. Not acceptance, but readiness. And I was ready. This wasn't the shaky kind of fear. It was the steady kind that comes when you know exactly what's ahead, and you choose to face it anyway. That evening, I logged into the bank with my new password. One by one, I checked the balances, noted the activity, and marked the accounts I freeze as soon as the hearing began. If Amanda wanted to claim I was forgetful, I would show her memory in real time. The courthouse was cavernous, with hard light and ceilings too high to feel human. Footsteps echoed, papers shuffled. Everyone spoke in tones that pretended they weren't about to decide someone's future. Judith walked beside me, calm but sharp, heels striking the floor with authority. I clutched a slim leather folder, neither empty nor overstuffed, just precise. "I'll handle most of the talking," Judith said at security. "The judge may want to hear from you directly. Just speak plainly." "I'm not here to perform," I told her. "I'm here to be seen." Amanda arrived 10 minutes later, dressed carefully in beige. Her husband one step behind, with a binder tucked under his arm like he was acting a part. They avoided my gaze. That was fine. Courtroom 207B was plain: 2 tables, a bench, rows of wooden seats. It smelled faintly of polish and paper. The judge, a woman with sharp eyes and a steady brass-like voice, studied the files before speaking. "The petitioner claims Mildred Collier is suffering cognitive decline and requires guardianship. Is that correct?" Amanda stood. "Yes, Your Honor. She forgets things, mishandles finances, resists help. My husband and I have been managing her accounts. We're concerned for her safety." Her voice trembled at just the right moments. She was skilled. "I'll give her that." Judith rose. "Your Honor, this portrayal is inaccurate. Miss Collier is fully competent, as proven by 2 recent evaluations. Furthermore, we have evidence of unauthorized financial activity by the petitioner, including a scheduled transfer of $38,000. The judge looked up sharply. "You're saying the petitioner misused her mother's funds?" "Yes, Your Honor." "Mrs. Collier will confirm this." I stood, folder in hand, laptop under my arm. My knees wavered, but they held. I opened the laptop, logged into my accounts, and displayed the records. I manage my passwords myself. I check my balances regularly. These transactions, I pointed, were scheduled by my daughter, without my consent. A quiet inhale came from Amanda's side. She claimed implied permission. I added, "I once asked her to carry groceries inside. I never asked her to take my money." The room stilled. Amanda's husband cleared his throat, but the judge cut him off. "Mrs. Collier," the judge asked, "are you capable of managing your own affairs?" "I am." "Have you been pressured or manipulated by your daughter?" "I've been slowly erased from my own life," I said. Silence again, heavier this time. The judge leaned back. "Thank you. That will be enough for now." As I passed Amanda, I saw her grip tighten on her pen as though it were the last steady thing in the room. Judith leaned toward me. "You shifted the tide," she whispered. I knew it already. I hadn't come to defend myself. I'd come to reclaim myself. After recess, Amanda was sworn in. Her voice softened. "I love my mother. Everything I've done has been to help. I never meant to take from her." Judith whispered at my side. "Watch for it." The word concern. And there it was. Concern. Best interest. The kind words that suffocate freedom. Amanda recited stories, windows left open, misplaced papers, a forgotten appointment. None of it more than human. Then came her husband, offering vague claims of confusion and mood swings, but no concrete incidents. Just tone, just suggestion. Finally, Dr. Lynn took the stand. Calm, professional, she stated clearly, "Mrs. Collier shows full cognitive strength. No memory decline, no impairment. She is capable of handling her affairs." "Any basis for guardianship?" Judith asked. "None whatsoever," Dr. Lynn replied. Amanda lowered her eyes. The judge adjourned. "A ruling will be issued within 3 business days." I gathered my folder, left without a glance backward. Outside, the sky had darkened. Judith said quietly, "She's going to lose, and she knows it." "That's not the part that hurts," I replied. "Amanda called that evening. I let it ring. She texted later, 'We need to talk.' But some bridges don't burn in flames. They collapse piece by piece until only distance remains." By the next morning, I was in my banker's office. Richard Hull, meticulous as always, adjusted his glasses as I handed him the folder. "You've built a solid case," he said. "I've had practice. What would you like me to do?" "Remove Amanda entirely. Her name, her email, her access. Gone. Permanently," he typed. Then turned the screen toward me. "Doan. Nothing's left the account since your password change. You stopped it in time." I nodded. For the first time in months, I felt the balance shifting back to where it belonged. Under my own name, my own control. "Would you like to appoint a new secondary contact?" the advisor asked. I didn't hesitate. "Yes," I said. "My granddaughter, Julia Witt. She just turned 22, studies preem, dependable, thoughtful, and most importantly, she listens." Richard nodded and wrote her name. "I also want to create a trust for her," I continued. "The same funds Amanda tried to move. Redirect them to Julia. Release them in stages across the next decade. School, health, but never all at once. I want her to understand how money works, how trust works. As for Amanda," I paused. "No lawsuits, no drama, just distance." He typed a few more keys, printed the forms, and I signed them slowly, carefully. The way David always taught me: read first, never rush. When we finished, Richard leaned back. "There's one more protection I recommend," he said, pulling out a slim black envelope. "It's a lockout clause. If anyone tries to access your accounts without permission, even with forged papers, all activity freezes until you approve it in person with voice and ID verification, like an alarm system." "Exactly." "I'll take it." I signed. And just like that, the locks were mine again. That evening, Julia came by as she always did, calling first, knocking softly, bringing ginger tea and crisp apples. We sat in the kitchen, no rush, no speeches. Then I slid a folder across the table. "What's this?" she asked. "Your name's on it," I said. She opened it, eyes widening. "Grandma, are you sure?" "Yes. But this isn't a prize, it's responsibility. You've been the only one who ever asked how I was without expecting anything in return." Her throat caught. She placed her hand on mine. "I'll take care of it." "I know," I said. "We didn't mention Amanda. Julia already understood, she always did." Before leaving, she hugged me longer than usual. "Call me if anything happens," she said. "It's never nothing," I replied with a small smile. 3 days later, the court ruling arrived in a white envelope with a golden state seal. I didn't open it right away. I poured tea, sat quietly, then finally read. "Petition for guardianship denied. No evidence of decline. Full capacity intact. All prior attempts void. My name, my choices, my dignity, officially restored." Judith called soon after. "I filed the revocations. Amanda has no standing now. She may try to apologize," Judith added. "She won't," I said. And we ended the call without goodbyes. At noon, Amanda arrived unannounced, purse clutched like a shield. "I got the letter," she said. "I was only trying to help." "You tried to erase me?" I answered. "That isn't help. That's theft with papers." Her voice shook. "I didn't mean to hurt you." "But you did." She asked quietly, "Do you still trust me?" I said nothing. Some questions aren't questions. They're confessions. "You've made your choice," I told her. "No, live with it." She turned and left, the car door closing like punctuation. That evening I wrote a letter, not to Amanda, not to the court, but to myself. "You didn't lose your mind. You found your voice. Don't let them take it again." I tucked it beside David's old watch. Whispers started in the community. Some avoided me, others, like Miriam from quilting, offered quiet solidarity. "She tried to take everything," Miriam said. "And you stopped her." Later, at the grocery store, a young cashier offered to carry my bags. "In case of what?" I asked. He stammered. "I'm not fragile," I said. "I'm old." "That's different." Let them talk. I had things to do. That night I wrote Julia another letter. "You'll inherit more than money. You'll inherit silence, guilt, expectations, often disguised as love. Learn the difference. Keep your kindness, but never let it be weaponized. The house felt steadier, not empty. Amanda lived now in the distance she created. I thought about her childhood, scraped knees, bedtime stories. Love doesn't vanish, but it changes. Mine had. A week later, I visited my old shop. The sign was worn, the windows clean. The bell above the door chimed, the same fragile note as before. The new owner, Dean, greeted me kindly. I tried not to change much, he said. I walked through slowly. The old oak table, the glass case, even the lamp from Manchester still flickered. He told me he'd kept some of my handwritten tags. They were just words, I said. They had care, he replied. I touched the shelves David once refinished. Still smooth, still steady, like me. Your daughter came by some months back, Dean said carefully. She asked if you had any unsold items still on record. Claimed she was settling your estate. I turned to him, stunned. She said what? His face reddened. I didn't give her anything. Something felt wrong. I checked, and you weren't listed in any obituaries. So I figured you were still around. I am, I replied. She seemed surprised when I told her that. I let out a long breath. Thank you. For trusting your instincts, he nodded. Before I left, he reached beneath the counter and brought out a small bundle wrapped in cloth. I think this was yours, he said. Found it tucked behind the register last year. I couldn't bring myself to sell it. I unwrapped it carefully. A tiny porcelain rabbit. Amanda's. She used to keep it on the windowsill as a child, saying it looked like it was watching people pass by. One day she dropped it. We glued it back together. The faint crack along its leg was still there. I studied it for a long time before wrapping it back up and slipping it into my bag. Outside, the air was sharp and cool. I walked down Main Street slowly, the wind tugging at my sleeves. Here, I wasn't the woman from the courthouse. I was just another person carrying a story, and that was enough. At home, I placed the rabbit on the sill, not as nostalgia but as a marker. Something broken, yes, but kept on my terms. That evening Julia called. She'd received the letter I had written. I read it twice, she said. I cried, but the good kind of tears. It felt like something I didn't know I was missing. That's how truth works, I told her. It arrives quietly, like rain on dry ground. She asked if she could visit over the weekend. I said yes. And this time when I hung up, I didn't check my accounts, didn't scan the door. I simply sat back and let silence cover me. Not emptiness, not fear, peace. The kind you gain when you stop defending your place in the world and simply take it back. At the market a few days later, I spotted Eleanor. She was studying jars of honey, comparing labels as though they held secrets. I recognized the tilt of her chin instantly. Some people age like fading photographs, but Eleanor had aged like stone, unchanged in form, softened only at the edges. We hadn't spoken in over 6 years. But when she looked up, she smiled. Mildred, she said. Eleanor. We stood there a moment, two older women surrounded by fluorescent light. Then she touched my arm. I heard, she said softly. Not from Amanda, from Helen. She goes to your church. She said you stood up in court. Said it was something to see. It wasn't a performance. I replied. I know, she said firmly. It meant something, even to those of us who never said it out loud. She told me about when her son began streamlining her bills. At first, she thought it was helpful. Then she realized she no longer knew the cost of anything. Water, heat, grocery. She hid passwords and cash like a child with secret candy. I felt ashamed, like I was betraying him, she admitted. You weren't, I said. I know that now. Watching what you did, it mattered. We walked the aisles together, side by side, not out of duty but out of rhythm. She told me about her garden. I told her about Julia. We didn't mention Amanda, but Eleanor understood anyway. At checkout, she looked at me. If you ever need quiet company, she said, you know where I live. That night, I sat by the window. The rabbit was still on the sill. The wind shook the trees with that low sound that makes you feel small but safe. I thought about all the women I'd known who disappeared inside their own homes, not from age but from being made to feel unnecessary. I made myself a promise. I will not fade quietly. Not into silence, not into someone else's version of love, not into false safety. I will claim what is mine, and I will not hand over the key again. A letter came from Amanda. Heavy paper, Neat handwriting, no return address. I already knew what it would say. Pages of half apologies I didn't realize I never meant. I thought I was helping. Mentions of stress, her marriage, Julia. But not a word about control. Not a word about money. On the last page she wrote, I hope one day you'll see that I acted out of love. I'll be here if you ever want to talk. If not, I understand. I folded the letter, slid it back into its envelope, and tucked it behind the porcelain rabbit. I didn't burn it, didn't tear it. Just left it there, another thing I chose not to carry. That week Julia came over again. We cooked soup. She peeled the carrots too thick, wasting half. I teased her, and she rolled her eyes. Your fault, you taught me. We laughed like time was ours. Afterward, sitting outside with mugs of mint tea, she asked carefully, Did you read it? I did.
Are you okay? Yes.
Do you want to talk about it? I looked at her face, so open, so different from her mother's. No, I said gently. She nodded, and we sat together in quiet. Two women, two generations holding silence differently, but safely. The next day, I went to the bank, not for business, just for proof. I logged in, balances correct, transfers blocked, everything in my name. I printed a copy, folded it, placed it in my purse. Not because I needed proof, but because the act of keeping proof was what had nearly undone me. That night I set the table for one. Fork, knife, napkin, no reason except that I existed, and existence deserves ceremony. I lifted a glass of wine and whispered, not as a wish but as a verdict, to the version of me no one could erase. Days later, a final call came from the law office, the guardianship case closed, sealed, irrevocable. I deleted the voicemail. Not all endings need keeping. That afternoon I looked out at the maple tree David planted the year Amanda was born. Taller than the house now, branches spread wide. I'd once thought of cutting it down. It hurt to see something survive when he didn't. Now I was glad I left it standing. Soon after, another envelope arrived. Amanda's last name on the corner. Inside, a check for $5,000. No note, no words. Just numbers. Gilt pressed into paper. I fed it through the shredder. Some silences cannot be bought. That night I pulled out my old photo albums. Not to remember her, but to remember me. At 24, holding newborn Amanda. At 36, standing with David in front of our first shop. At 50, laughing in the garden with Julia in my lap. Versions of myself. Still here, still mine. Later, Julia brought brochures for community classes. You don't have to pick one, she said. But maybe pick something? I'm not broken, I reminded her. I know, she smiled. But maybe you're done surviving. That landed differently. The next week, I enrolled in a memoir workshop. Not to publish, not to impress, just to tell my story my way. When you're 80, no one edits you, they listen. And maybe if they're wise, they learn. So here is my last note. If you've ever been silenced, sidelined, or disguised as fragile, stand up. Even if your hands shake, even if it feels late, power taken can be returned. Dignity bent can be straightened. Silence only rules if you surrender it. We don't have to go quietly, not anymore.